What was it like growing up in Southern California, where we are? We're in San Diego right now, and never eating meat your entire life? Hello, and welcome to the Empathy Podcast. This podcast seeks to explore the minds of those who not only understand or experience empathy, but of those who wish to take action, build, and practice empathetic behavior through conscious decision and responsible lifestyle choices. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, this podcast might be just for you. So sit back, relax, and use what you were born with. Empathy. All right. Hello and welcome to the Empathy Podcast. I'm here with my cousin Dave. So this is the first time that I've had him on the podcast, and I'm really excited to have him. Actually, growing up, to be honest, we were like best friends. We were like pretty much like we were about the same exact age.
A lot of the same classes.
Almost the same classes, going to the same high school. You know, we lived at one point like on the same property, you know.
Separated by a creek.
Yeah, separated by a creek, right? So there was definitely a lot of situations where like we were always together, riding bikes, doing everything. And you have a very fascinating story that I personally think, like, every time I hear your story and where you came from to where you are now, like, I swear to you, it always impresses me. And like, I really look up to you now, and I know that at times you're like, I'm looking up to you, and I'm like, no, I'm looking up to you.
Yeah,
you know, but like, I think that's great in a family setting to have that, you know, where it's like, you know, especially if we're trying to do good, you know, and trying to do good things in the world. So let's go ahead and get this started. I have a few questions for you, and I hope that everyone that's watching or listening will get a chance to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, you forgot to mention we were also roommates for about a year too.
We were roommates. Yeah,
that's tough too.
I try to forget those times. I try to forget those
Definitely.
times.
I don't remember them.
You don't remember
I don't
those
remember
times.
them.
Yeah, we'll get into that. It's funny. All right, so question number 1. What was it like growing up in Southern California, where we are? We're in San Diego right now, and never eating meat your entire life? Like, what the heck is that like?
Well, lots of people for sure are confused how I've never had a California burrito, definitely with no meat. But as a kid, it was really weird because there was no other kids that didn't eat meat growing up, and back then it was like those little chocolate milk pouches and all the cafeteria food. They didn't have any options for us, so we always had to pack our lunches, and you know, we always had substitute cheeses for things, substitute bolognas, and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches were big, but it was just different, and a lot of people, you know, didn't understand that. Now I think a lot more it's understanding that there's a lot more kids out there that are being raised plant-based and vegan and vegetarian, but back then I was the only one. I don't know many others that are actually vegan that have never eaten meat, but it's good to see that there's other people out there that are raising their kids that way. It was so different because there wasn't a lot of other kids that were vegetarian, so we got made fun of a lot, me and my 2 brothers, because we were all 3 of us were raised vegan by our dads, you know, choosing, and then we managed to stay or continue to be vegetarian, at least me and my middle brother, who also never eaten meat, and we've continued that way, and I've chosen to, you know, raise my kids that way as well. And it's just, you know, there was a lot to overcome, but, you know, like, I didn't, you know, let it bother me because it was just a constant thing, you know. And so I was just like, the less I let it bother me, you know, the less people did it. And to be honest, some people swear that I've eaten meat, and I'm like, nah, dude, like, that was a bean burrito. They're like, no, dude, it was a California burrito. I'm like, no, it was a bean burrito. Are you sure? Yeah, because I don't look like your typical, like, vegan or vegetarian. Like, people think of, you know, back in the day at least, you know, they thought of them as like skinny and not getting enough protein or nutrients and things like that. So like, I wasn't really a skinny kid ever. I was decent size, you know, like not overweight as a kid, but active and physical and things like that. And yeah, it didn't make that big of a difference, but it just definitely made me a lot thicker skinned for sure, getting into the older ages, and then continuing, you know, deciding to go back to being vegan and plant-based again now.
We'll get into that. That's cool. Yeah. So real quick, I wanted to say something. I remember when you were young and you being vegetarian, and I made fun of you all the time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like,
Yeah.
I was always making fun of you, and
Yeah.
I was even like, why don't you just eat it? Like, I don't understand, but not in a way of like kind of like really antagonizing you, like just not getting it.
It was just
like,
not
like I
understanding.
just don't
Yeah.
understand. I'd just be like, I know you don't eat it, but like, why not? You know,
Yeah,
why not
why
just
not?
eat it? You know what I mean? Like, and then it was just like a total like a disconnect for me.
Yeah.
You know? And I remember even when I made the decision, I remember when I called you up one day. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
when I made my decision, I was like, hey, I think I'm gonna go vegan. You were one of the first people that I decided to tell.
Yeah.
I remember you thought I was joking.
Yeah.
And you were like, I don't believe you. Like, you're not gonna do that. And I was just like, no, like, I'm really doing it.
Yeah.
Like, it's
No,
really happening.
and it's
because it's so weird, because it's like such a you doing it your whole life and me making fun
Yeah.
of it,
Yeah.
right? And then me being on the other side.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because like I said, we lived together, and we lived off of, you lived off of El Pollo Loco because it was in the same parking lot as our apartment complex, and I lived off of Santana's Mexican food across the street. Like, it was super weird, especially also your dad too was a big barbecue roaster, and like it was just a different environment. And your dad and our uncles gave my dad crap for many years when he went vegan and when he decided to raise us vegetarian and not eat meat, and like all the family barbecues and get-togethers. It's like, it was just weird. And when you told me, I was like, what? No way. Like, I still it's still weird to believe it, but you've taken it to another level for sure. And yeah, it's crazy, but it's cool to see that change in people, and that people can change consciously and make decisions based on their own beliefs instead of what they're told to believe growing up.
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah, like even just going over to your house, like, I was such a not picky eater, so I wasn't like, your food's gross, your food's
No,
weird.
you ate everything.
I ate anything. Like, I was like, I don't even care what I think there's peanut butter in this. I don't think there's supposed to be peanut butter in
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah.
Like, and I just ate whatever, like it didn't
No,
matter.
you
But
were like that fourth or fifth kid in the family where you walk up and you're like, can I have some? And my dad's all, what? You want some of this? And then you'd be like, go tell your dad you just ate some tofu. And tell him you liked it too.
I don't even know if I did. I don't even know what I'd say. But yeah, it was just so funny too, because like, I just remember thinking like it tasted fine, like, and there was no big issue, but I never thought like I want to do that.
Yeah.
I never was like I want to do that too or anything like that. I didn't even think of it as a lifestyle. Like just a choice. Like, you're not eating that, whatever.
Yeah.
Like I looked at food as just all food is food.
Food is food.
Food is, and until I learned that some things aren't food. And then I realized, well, that's not food anymore. All right, so my next question for you is, what do you remember most when we were kids? What are like some memories that you have?
I mean, like we said, when we were kids, we grew up living across a creek from each other. So, I mean, we all did the same things, which is great. It's not like I was different because I was raised vegetarian. We played in the creeks. We climbed the trees. We got poison oak together. We got... dirty. We played on the trampolines.
Broken bones.
We broke bones. I was there when you broke your ankle. I'm pretty sure you were there when I broke my. We built bike jumps together all the time, and that's the kind of stuff that like we did. We go on mile-long bike rides, and it's like I didn't have any physical deficits to anybody else. I was just as good as anybody else on a BMX
if
bike.
anything, like out of us, like you were the better one. You know what I mean? Like you were the one like doing things first, right? And like hitting the stuff and like being the more progressive and being more the daredevil. Even though I was pretty fearless at a lot of things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like it was always like, yeah, you're definitely going to hit that thing first, probably.
Yeah.
Like
Usually,
that.
I mean, if I were the one to build it, I'd be the first one to test it, and usually wouldn't end well or whatever. But yeah, I mean. We grew up just like, doing normal kid things that are different from nowadays, being outside till the time it was dark and our parents were like, hey, Kevin, come home. Hey, David, come home.
I remember one time we went to one of the schools nearby and we would go to our grandma's house, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we would go and we used to go play video games there. We played Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
After school. And we always loved that and we always played that. And then I remember one time we were wrestling there. and like we were wrestling, you know, like kids wrestling. I remember you broke my foot.
Oh yeah.
While we were wrestling, you broke my left foot.
Yeah.
And I remember like
it was like middle school, huh?
Even though it was broken, it was one of those bones. Like I have several bones that have been broken that my dad's like, we're not going to the hospital.
Yeah.
Well, it's not bad enough. We're not going to the hospital. The only reason we went, the one time I broke my leg when we were jumping the dirt jump, like across, that was like across the way, on that one dirt jump by Jeff's house.
Yeah.
When I broke my leg on that one, the only reason I went was because it was so bad.
Yeah, it was like
so sticking
completely sideways.
like needed surgery, like dislocated, and like that was the only like it would have been. We're not going. We're not going.
Yeah.
I broke my right shoulder, right, and I had to write with my left hand in school because he said we're not going to the hospital.
Yeah.
He put that like mentality in me of like not wanting to go to the hospital though.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I will go only when I feel like I absolutely feel like I have to, you know, like I'll try anything else. And that led me to the choices that I made today in a lot of ways. I would have been like, if I would have been raised like,
go to the doctor for everything, go for everything. Yeah.
I don't know if I would have ever got off medication.
You're like every little thing you need to go to the doctor for. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for
there
sure.
There are definitely some serious things to go for, but definitely,
Anything sticks out that you remember?
No, not else that I can think of. I mean, besides like high school, growing up together, you know, parties.
Oh, even the vegetarian thing, like even you being vegetarian and you getting all the shit, like it never fazed you. Like you would think like for me, like looking to you, you were always more confident and more secure, more like it didn't bother you, and like maybe I was maybe a little bit more insecure, you know what I mean, like whether it showed or not, you know, I was the class clowns, whether it showed or not, I was, you know what I mean, and I always looked at you as like being more confident, and it's amazing, even though how much shit you get for something like that, because most people in that situation they're gonna struggle a lot more,
you know,
be reactive
about it,
be reactive and be like, oh, you know, like I'm different. What do you want your daughters to remember most about you? You know, as they grow up and they see in you, and they're you know, from the time that they were to now to like as they're adults. Like, what are some kind of things that you want them to remember you by and stuff?
Well, a lot of what I want them to remember me by is by what they saw before, that they don't have to see me as, you know, I being, you know, 70 pounds overweight, an alcoholic, a distant. Stressed out all the time, just not present in the moment with them. And I could see that kind of happening before I decided to, you know, change my lifestyle and get back to a different path. I could see that they were getting to a point in their age, like where they were noticing things, and I wasn't really being like the father I should have been. And, you know, I want to be better than the way my grandparents were to my parents, to the way my parents were to us as kids. You know, I'd like to kind of do something different and kind of break the pattern in the way we were. Not saying that it was a bad thing, but just different direction, and give them some things that I didn't have. Like, you know, I would like to be around more too, like as physically active with them, and show them certain things that, like, you know, when we were growing up, like for example, so when we were kids, it's like my dad wasn't always around. It was like us as kids, we were playing together and doing all these things, and, you know, I don't know what he was doing. He was off doing his own thing, and you know, I want to be around for that and take my kids out and do stuff and be physically active and just be around. And then I also don't want that to be a burden on them later on in life either. I want them to remember me as, you know, being healthy and being physical and being active, and, you know, be like proud of who I am and where I came from, and like what I did differently than others. And, you know, like my grandpa, you know, got dementia and, you know, passed away earlier than he probably should have. And my mom had to take care of him and put him in a home. And, you know, it's just and it was tough on her. And it's very emotional to see a shell of the person that you remember them to be. And that is the last kind of memory she has of him, is just being an empty shell of himself with dementia, not memorizing who they were, and just being sick and ill. And like I don't want that. Like, I know it's not the way that it has to be, because I've seen it, and you can do it through proper exercise, nutrition, diet, lifestyle changes that you can be around more. And like I want to be around for my grandkids. Like our grandparents were old. You know, like you said, we would go to my grandma's house and our grandma and grandpa's house, and they were older and they couldn't get up and play. You know, our grandma smoked cigarettes up until her, you know, until she passed away, and she was sick and had emphysema and all this stuff. And it's like, they weren't able to do anything with us as kids. Like, I want to be able to, like, if, I don't know, go for walks and be active and take them to the beach and surf with them, you know, in my 70s if possible, you know, and just kind of be more present and have them think of me as someone that does things for other people, so that it'll help them in the future be more empathetic and give back to others as well, and be kinder to other kids too, so that they're not the ones picking on some kid because he's vegetarian or, you know, because he does something different than what other people do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Do you feel like the way, like what you're doing now, like they're emulating some of those things, and they're like, you know how they say monkey see, monkey do?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Do you feel like that, like, I know there's a lot of parents that say, oh, I'm going to tell them what to do, but I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to tell them what's right. And I see that sometimes they often don't listen to everything that you might be saying, but they're really watching what you're doing. So they're mimicking what you're doing. Do you see like some of that?
Oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, it's like, it's interesting. It's funny because like I have some gym equipment downstairs in the garage, and they see me work out and they want to go work out. Like my oldest can do like 5 pull-ups.
What if you told them, go work out and I'm going to sit here?
Yeah, they would know what to do. You know, they would go do
No, without you doing it. Like you never, like you just tell them to do it.
They see me do it. And they're like, hey, I want to work out. Like,
so
if daddy's doing it.
If you just told them, right, without teaching them, and you were sitting on the couch, they're not likely to do it.
No, I mean,
right?
it's just not, it's not a good like example of the way things work. And that's kind of how we grew up too, is, you know, we were told to do things instead of being shown to do things, and like following by example. And especially kids, they absorb everything like super quick. They're more visual because they don't understand how things are done and the way they're done.
I think we're designed, we have more senses in our eyeballs than anywhere else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like more sensitivity, more nerve endings.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the reason. I think there's we are way more visual than we actually realize.
Yeah.
You know, and we learn way more, you know, through our eyes and through everything than like any other part of our learning.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a big piece of it. It's the same thing as like why we see in color and why we see all these different things. You know, it's like there's a big reason. I think our eyes are the way that they are.
Yeah.
And I think that the kids learning from the visual is a big reason, because that's their natural tendency.
Yeah, and that kind of like goes back to the other question, is like, you know, with them, like I was always sitting on the couch kicking my feet up watching Netflix while drinking beers on the couch when they were younger. And it's like they're going to want to do that in the future if they see that. But if the first thing I do when I come home is I do a couple push-ups, a couple pull-ups, you know, do some sit-ups, whatever, they want to do that stuff too, because that's what I'm doing. They basically want to do what their parents do, especially when they're younger. And a lot of people are like, they end up not wanting to do what their parents do to try to be different and rebel and whatever the case is. But yeah, I mean, it's best to be, you know, shown by example. And I think they're starting to see that a lot more.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So when did you feel like you were at your lowest point, and how did you come back from that?
Well, so that was probably about like 2017. I was, you know, at a point where I thought I was at like the peak of my life. I was, you know, late 20s, early 30s, and I think I was like 29. And then I was a store manager. You know, I had a nice place in San Francisco. I had, you know, one kid, and I had another kid on the way. And I thought like, hey, you know, I've made it. This is cool. You know, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I'm happy doing it. But realistically, I mean, I wasn't happy at all. I was drinking every night. I was overweight. I had a poor diet. I didn't exercise. I worked 10 to 12 hours a day. I was gone all day. I didn't, you know, give the attention to my, you know, significant other at the time. And I didn't do what I thought I should be doing. And, you know, I had some issues with breathing. And that kind of sparked some points in me noticing my health wasn't there when I went to the doctors and they're like, oh, you have asthma. Have you had asthma when you were younger? And I'm like, no, not really. I somehow developed asthma probably from stress and being overweight. And so I got prescribed steroids for inhalers and things like that. And, I was doing it half-assedly. So I didn't really take it seriously, and I didn't properly, I was personally, I felt like I was better than the issues that were really going on. And that was about part of it. And then, they didn't say hey, you're overweight, maybe you should exercise, get your cardiorespiratory system going, go outside, walk, run, do something different. And, they just gave me inhalers. And then later on, we ended up moving back home from San Francisco. We moved back here, once we had 2 kids, and we're like, hey, we want to be around our family and all this stuff. And so we moved back home, and I stepped down from a store manager to an assistant store manager. And a couple months later, I got bronchitis, and, kind of the same thing, respiratory infection in my lungs. And they just prescribed some antibiotics, and that did it for a little bit. And, I still had some shortness of breath and stuff. And, still roughly 215, 220 pounds. And at this point, when I went and got my inhalers, they'd throw me on the scale and it was 215 pounds. And after that point, I never hopped on a scale again, because I was like, this is crazy. I don't I want to put it out of sight, out of mind, pretend I'm not, 215 pounds at 5'7". And so I didn't,
That's like a running back in the NFL.
Yeah, I wasn't a running back.
Damian Tomlinson.
I wasn't a running back. I was laying on my back. But yeah, so then that was the second issue I had, and it just kind of progressed. And then, I got promoted to a store manager again, took on this other responsibility and role. And then I had some issues in my sternum, chest area, a little bit lower, and I sharp pains. And I kind of ignored it, just living the same life of poor diet, drinking every night. And I had some inflamed pancreas. I went and eventually got it looked at. And this was actually after I got it looked at, after I went to the emergency room, because I woke up in the middle of the night throwing up blood. And they're like, how much do you drink? And I was like, oh, not that much. And so they're like, hey, if you're drinking alcohol, you should really cut back. And, I cut back for a couple months, whatever the case was. And then, yeah, so that had happened. And then the inflamed pancreas, they did a bunch of blood work on me, and that's when they told me I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, early stages of liver cirrhosis, fatty liver, type 2 diabetes, and then my blood sugar was out of control. And they were saying, hey, you need to quit drinking, you need to quit doing all this stuff. And I said, okay. And they wanted to prescribe me some medication for it. And I was like, that doesn't really, to me, it's that's just putting a Band-Aid on it. I would just continue to take this medication, but still eat like crap. I would still probably be drinking, because it's basically kind of like a green light. Oh yeah, here you go. You can keep doing this as long as you take these with it. And I, did some research and, read some articles and stuff like that. And I had saw, that, I cut out sugar. That was one of the biggest things, right? So I was energy drinks, 30 grams, 40 grams of sugar a day. So that was kind of an easy one. Cut out that.
And you have seemingly 2, 3, 4 of those a day. It seemed
I'd be a 3 to 4 a day kind of energy drink person. And
that was the same with my dad too.
Yeah, and it's a lot, and you don't realize it. But I mean, we should only have 25 grams of added sugar a day in our diets. And I was triple, quadruple that on a regular basis, plus drinking and all this other stuff, those sugars and that. And so, yeah, after that, I kind of went, all right, I'm going to go low carb, no sugar diet. I did that, all low carb breads, all low carb tortillas, no sugar drinks. I was really checking all the added sugars and everything I was eating. And that helped me lose 15, 20 pounds right away. Then I started adding in exercise, because once I lost some weight, it felt easier to carry my body and do things. So I started doing biking. I was biking all the time. I did a couple 30-mile bike rides, and that helped me lose even more weight. And then that's kind of where, around the time that it came into playing, that you went vegan, and I'd kind of seen okay, this is cool, what else can I do to help myself? Because I was kind of every diet I was doing and like it was progressing and I was seeing progress in it. So I was like, all right, let me just try one more thing. And I was like, all right, I was already vegetarian. And at that point is like when I started eating like a little bit better, like eating cheeses and eating sour cream and stuff in it, like it didn't feel good to eat that kind of stuff.
I remember when we went to, you're in San Francisco and you cooked dinner there and we had like a cheese enchilada or something like that. And it was like
pounded cheese,
like how much
pounded
like,
cheese,
like so much. It was like the most cheese. I ate a lot of junk there.
Yeah.
I ate a lot of cheese. I'm like, this is a lot of cheese for me.
Yeah, and well, that's the thing is I was a vegetarian, but like instead of pepperoni or whatever or meat or chicken in the enchilada, it was just extra cheese. Add some extra cheese, extra sour cream, maybe some guacamole. But yeah, so that was like still like I started noticing when I started biking all the time and being more physical that things like dairy and all these like heavy fatty stuff was like making me not want to be active in these things. Like it was affecting my performance when I was doing that. And that's when I was like, I'm going to start going vegan. So I would go like dairy-free days. So I'd be like, I go like a whole day without eating. And it's like, oh, that wasn't too bad. And then another whole day and then another whole day. And then I remember it was Thanksgiving weekend and I was at my in-laws and I had gratin potatoes and mashed potatoes and bread and butter and, you know, like all this stuff. And I just felt so sick after that. Like I binged eat, and everybody does it on Thanksgiving. It happens. And like, I just felt so gross after like getting healthy and exercising and trying to eat better that I just overdid it. And I was like, I'm done. So the weekend after that Thanksgiving is like Monday. I'm like, I'm going vegan. And so I did it and have stuck through and it's going to be like, I think 3 years coming up. And that's like where you and I started talking a lot more about Purium and like, hey, what kind of other things? Cause I could already tell like I was kind of a junk food vegan at first, you know, doing the Impossible and Beyond and stuff. But I was also getting creative, like trying different things. Like I started putting sweet potatoes in a lot of things and getting more creative with tofu because I grew up on tofu, but it was kind of the same tofu all the time. And just paying attention to what I was putting in my body. And then like a couple years, maybe a year after that is when I was like, hey, I'm just going to start going to the gym. Like I know Purium has stuff like I want to get, you know, as much nutrition as possible. And that's when I started with the protein and the beet powder and the cherry juice and all this stuff. And it's been just over a year in July that I've been going to the gym. And, you know, I'm taking my Purium protein, the power shake, the cherry juice, the amino acids, everything. And in that time frame, I was about 145 when I started going to the gym. And now I'm 175. Like up and down, I'll go from 173 to 175. And like I'm the strongest I've ever been. I'm more fit than I was in my 20s and definitely like even in high school. Like it's kind of crazy, you know, that I feel as good as I do in my 30s. And this is all, you know, and I had some issues where
I remember in high school when you were working out because I wasn't working out that much in high school, and I remember like you working hard and trying to work out, and like you're definitely much bigger now. You know, have much better results, and it's so much easier when we're younger to do.
And you think, and that's what it's like. Oh, everybody's like, oh yeah, in your 20s, you're youthful and all this stuff. Well, it's like I did it poorly. Like I drank a lot. In my early 20s, I would be like gut bombs with whey protein and like I like creatine and trying to do like all this bulk stuff, but I wasn't eating clean at all. Like I'd be like, go to the gym, eat a bunch of protein afterwards, protein shake, and then go get like a bean and cheese burrito and mac down on that. And
so you had like the work, but not the nutrition part.
I'd put in the work. Like there was a point where I was pretty big, like in my early 20s too, but I was definitely not as lean, definitely not as strong either. Like I'm 3 times as strong as I was back then. Like when I started a year ago, like I struggled to put like 25 pounds on each side up, and now on the same machine, I'm putting 345s on each side. So I don't even know what the math is on that, but it's a lot of progress in just a year, and it's the balance is the nutrition and the fitness. It's not one or the other. It's like if you really want to get the balance and you want to get the results, it's got to be both. And so, and also I forgot to mention too is like part of my downward spiral was when I broke both my legs. You know, I broke both my femurs, my tib, fib, shattered my foot into hundreds of different little, it was basically powder. The doctor said it looked like smashed cornflakes, my foot. And that kind of put me in this like, oh crap, like that was my glory days are now all behind me kind of thing. And it's like, well, now what do I look forward? My legs are busted. I've got 4 titanium rods and 20 some odd screws and pins. And I'm like, oh, well, this is going to suck forever. And it did. It sucked for a really long time. But most of it sucked because that I was overweight and I was putting so much stress on all these joints and stuff. Once I lost the weight, a lot of those pains went away. And so like, I didn't need the pain medicines anymore. I didn't need the pain medications. I got proper nutrition in my diet that's like helping with function of my blood flow and like muscle tissue development and stuff. So it's like all the scar tissue is not bothering me as much as it used to. And you know, like I was in a wheelchair for 6 months. There was a point where I was like, oh well, I guess I'll never run again or I'll never ride a bike again. And it's like, no, like I mountain bike. I just ran an 8-mile run last like 2 weeks ago. So, and I have plans to do a 5K in the future. And like, I just have like all these things that I want to check off on my list. And it's like things that I thought that were over in my 20s, but now I'm like in my almost mid 30s and I'm doing things that I never thought I would do early on in my life. But it was just the mentality of like numbing myself down through drugs, alcohol, you know, getting satisfaction from foods that were just temporary.
Yeah.
Instead of long lasting.
Food addiction is a real thing.
Oh yeah.
And people do not talk about it, and people don't even realize they're addicted when they are. There's no like, here you are, you got the addiction. It's time for your treatment. You know what I mean? There isn't nothing like that. You know what I mean? And most people deny that they're even addicted to food. Yeah. When I first made my shift and I was like, I'm gonna make a change, like at all. Like it wasn't like I'm going vegan. I actually said, and like my first post of like deciding when I made the decision I was going to do it and like shared it with some people or whatever, like I said, I'm quitting my addiction to meat, dairy, and eggs. That's what I said, and that's how I classified it as. And to be honest, that's kind of how I treated it as an addiction in the beginning. You know what I mean? I just learned so much more, you know what I mean, over time. But it was like, my mentality was like, this is an addiction, you know, and I need to fix this. But when I actually did fix it, when I actually felt where I wasn't addicted to food, because I did overcome my food addiction, right, and I was able to reverse that. When I do now, I don't have those cravings. They don't control me, and it's a real thing. Like you're really controlled by the cravings. You're really controlled by some parasites. You're really controlled by bad bacteria, imbalance of gut bacteria. Even taking the antibiotics that you took can destroy your gut microbiome. Now you're not absorbing things effectively. Now you're not getting the nutrition that you need. You might be eating the right things. You're not absorbing them. Right? Then let's say the whey protein that you're talking about before. It's trying to break that down. It's trying to break all of that down and try to process it. Well, if your body's trying to break this down, right? And it's harder to break down. It's not quite as easy, right? Yeah. It doesn't have the ability to use the energy for your muscles, to use the energy for the other parts of your body. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it's using so much energy for
and that's the way it's like.
Right?
It always felt that way.
The food that you're eating, right, and a lot of the food that you're taking in, especially after the gym and especially for the parts for your recovery, is not putting a lot of taxing on your body. It's like just what you need. Yeah. You know, and it's very, very little digestion. You know, that's going on. If you were to eat something like really heavy before the gym, like let's say whatever's sitting over there, you know, you're gonna eat those, right? Right before the gym, your body's gonna be working really hard to digest that, right? All the blood is going to your stomach and the digestive system to make that happen, right? So it's not going to your muscles, your bloodstream, or anything like that. And that's one of the big issues that some people have. So you combine, you know, that it's a combination of the work that you do. You got to put in the work, right? And a combination of the nutrition that you have, but also the timing too. Some of the timing, you know, like I always say, like for people that I work with, and like even telling you probably in the past, is like you want to eat, you know, like the most important time to get like really quality nutrition is like right when you know, your first meal, whatever it is, you know, that you're breaking the fast. That should be good. It shouldn't be heavy bacon, eggs, greasy, breakfast burrito, whatever kind of stuff we've been doing, right? And then after something really physical, like those are really some of the best times, you know, to get like at least the highest quality. Everything in between, not that it doesn't matter, but you can get away with some of those things on the in between if you're eating at the right times. Like they always say, don't eat before bed or anything like that. Like there's real reasons why that makes a difference. You know what I mean? If you're sleeping, your sleep time is to recover. You're sleeping, your recovery. But if you ate a lot before you went to bed, well, your body can only do so many things. It's not spending the time recovery.
Yeah.
It's spending the time digesting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And now, and maybe you've digested half of the night and half of the time recovery. Well, now you've recovered only 50% of what you would have. You know what I mean? If you just, time some of the things.
Yes.
All right. So I want to ask you the last question so we follow up. All right. So that we can wrap this up. So how are you now helping others that maybe have gone through some of the things that you went through? How are you kind of maybe giving back or helping some other people with some of those experiences?
Actually, I mean, at this point, I've decided to start studying to be a certified personal trainer because I do want to help people, and I want people to understand that it is possible to overcome, being overweight and going through struggles. It's hard. A lot of times, you go to a gym and you see a personal trainer and you're like, that person's been fit their whole life. It's genetics. It's like, no, like I wasn't. If you see pictures of me at my heaviest, like you wouldn't recognize it, and it's possible to do it. So I feel like I'm kind of like an average American that was struggling with normal things that everybody goes through. And
Rich Roll, right? Rich Roll,
yeah,
the Rich Roll podcast,
yeah.
His story, I think that's why so many people resonate with his story similarly, because he did his transformation in his 40s, you know what I mean, and became an ultra endurance athlete, starting in his 40s from overweight, unhealthy, and that resonates with so much more people. And what's possible. That
kind of I think Plant-Based Ben was one of the ones that I saw because he was in his 40s, and I was like, oh wow, cool, I'm only in my 30s, like I got plenty of time, like I want to look like that in my 50s, you know what I mean? So like I think it's possible for anybody to do it, and it's intimidating to go work out to the gym, and like people don't have that. I guess it's kind of a mentality, and it's just like I said, overwhelming. It's scary, and you feel insecure about yourself, and especially because if you go and you're like, there are these people that are fit there, and it's like, well, a lot of the time you don't know that those people weren't fit at one point in time, or they have been and they've worked really hard to maintain it. Once you get to a maintenance point, it's pretty easy to maintain it, but I feel like it's pretty relatable to me because it's happening to everybody out there, and nobody really is paying attention to it in the way that I think it should be, and I'd like to help a lot of people in that way. And like right now is like I'm working out with a friend of mine, Sherry, and she's a raw vegan, and she's kind of in that same boat. She would go to the gym and she would go walk on the treadmill because she'd see all these fit dudes in the gym and like not really know what to do, look around, and it's like some people just need that guidance. And so it's like for me, she's just like, hey, I saw your story, you've been raised vegetarian, or you've been vegan and vegetarian, and you've never eaten meat. Like that's pretty awesome. Do you mind if I go to the gym with you? And I was like, all right. So so we started working out together. And then another buddy of mine, he's kind of in the same boat. He's plant-based and he's vegan, and his wife is plant-based vegan, and they're raising their son vegan, and he's kind of in the same boat. He never really worked out and doesn't really know what to do, but he's at a point in his life, he lost a bunch of weight. He was drinking a bunch and, overweight, same thing. I think he was diabetic at the time, and high cholesterol, high blood pressure, like all the same kind of things. And, it's a lot more relatable than to me in my own personal experience. And so I was like, all right, dude, I'll start working out with you. And he came to me and he was like, hey, I'm ready for that next step. So that's it makes me feel good to help people out. And I want to kind of pay back to the community of people like that are willing to be like, hey, I'm ready for some change. I'm ready for some help. And where do I start? And, being a certified trainer, would be super cool and gratifying. And
the thing is, really quick, is you don't know how much of an impact that it can make in someone's life. Those things that you're doing for people.
Yeah.
Because like when my dad passed away.
Yeah.
Right. Like that destroyed the whole family. To be honest, that whole side.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like that's not even there anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And so that
and the events that all came after that too.
Well,
like
sure.
that,
There's a lot of things. That's
our
what I'm
whole
saying.
side of the Luna side is.
Yeah. So let's say you have your kids. You were going down your path. You know what I mean? And maybe you leave this earth too soon. You know what I mean? Like just how devastating that is onto
Yeah.
the family, right? So now you have the opportunity to help prevent someone from that potentially.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're working with someone, and now they're feeling better, and it's not just I feel better and I look better. It's no, you're gonna be around longer, right?
Yes.
And that's gonna be very important because you're gonna be needed, you know, to your family at times. If when our grandparents passed away,
Yeah.
right? It's different,
Yeah.
right? Because they lived a relatively
full
long
life.
life, a full
Yeah.
life. They're no one's depending on them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They've gotten to past the point of any kind of dependent. Right?
Yeah.
Hopefully, I mean, no one should have been depending on my dad
Yeah.
at that age, but my sister was. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? She was depending on him, right?
Yeah.
And that did impact her,
Yes.
right? And so, but that didn't have to happen.
Yeah,
right?
it
That
didn't.
could have
It was
been
preventable,
prevented,
for sure.
right? Like that could have
Yeah.
been prevented, right? And so you're making such a huge impact like that, and then the other thing too is like when I decided to go vegan, I know some people might need help with that, right?
Yeah.
That's understandable. Some people need a coach and help it. For me personally, it was really, really easy, right? It was like a overnight decision. Seriously,
Yeah.
it was like I made the decision and I'm doing it
same when
overnight,
when I
right?
went vegan, yeah.
Yeah, but my decision to be healthy, right?
Yeah.
Even though I made that decision, it did not happen like that.
No.
It has been really, really
Resignating.
hard.
Yeah.
Like going vegan has been really easy. Being healthy in this world, in this lifestyle, is actually way, way harder. And what I'm
Yeah.
saying is, I did need support. I
Yeah.
needed a lot of guidance. I needed a lot of help. I
Yeah.
still do. I still rely and still use, in a way, not use, but like I still have a support system.
Yeah.
I have a huge community. I have a large community of people, you know, that I can rely on, that I can ask on, that I can get supportive on the health side
Yeah.
of things, right? And I think that that is so critical. Like what you can provide for people from a nutrition standpoint and a fitness standpoint is very, very valuable.
Yeah.
Much more than just I look good, I'm strong, right? No, don't get me wrong; those are so important.
Yeah.
But I look at like long term stuff now, and,
Yeah.
and like the biggest thing that makes me feel the happiest for your health is not just you, but it's actually your daughters.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I've said that before.
It's definitely.
Right?
I mean, they're definitely my biggest priority in it, and it's not like that was kind of the key turning point. Was like it kind of like with your dad passing away too. It was like, oh dang, like that could happen to any of us, and like the path I was in is like I probably wouldn't have lived past my 30s, man. Like it was bad, and honestly, like my mental like strength wasn't there either. Like I was at a point like I was miserable. I hated looking in the mirror. I hated hopping on the scale. Like I didn't like who I was.
And from the outside looking in, no one
could tell. Like
no one would have thought.
You know,
that.
I was still cracking jokes at work and you know having fun, going out to the bar and partying and stuff. But like deep down inside, like I was miserable, and like who knows what could have happened. You know what I mean? It's like, but now, you know, with working out and proper diet and nutrition and all this stuff is like reading too, man. I read like every night. I read books, and it's all about mental health and stability and entrepreneurial and like just developing your brain as a muscle too. You got to work that out just as much as anything else. But going to the gym and doing any type of activity is mentally still stabilizing yourself to be more present too, because
some people say that working out is like one of the best forms of depression or antidepressant.
Yeah. And it's like, and that was kind of like the one thing I said about my grandpa, my mom's dad, and he had dementia. He stopped using his mind and stopped, you know, doing things that kept him his mind straight, and he passed away earlier than he probably should have. And so like I don't want that to happen. You know what I mean? It's like I want my kids to be like, like I said, I don't want them to remember me in that way. I want them to be able to see me as long as possible, and it's for them. And like I don't want them to have to depend on taking care of me, or I want to be dependent on them. Like, how important that is.
There's a lot of information now about how diet is a huge relation to Alzheimer's and dementia. Mm-hmm. You know, and then also, to be honest, out of all the diseases in the world, I think that's the worst one for the family members to go through out of all of them.
Oh, like seeing it.
I think that's the worst one.
For sure.
Like they're all terrible for the individual. Like I can't quantify that, but for the family, I think that's the worst one.
When you walk in and to see them and they don't recognize you, and and I mean honestly, like some of the things that my grandpa said, like still kind of like haunt me. Yeah. And like make me feel so bad for him that he had to go through that. But it's like, he didn't take care of himself the way he should have. And it could have all been somewhat preventable. And if not just slow the process down, you know what I mean? And that's where we're all going to die no matter what, but we can at least somewhat slow the process and make it less also miserable on ourselves and the family. In the end, it's like people talk about living long, whatever. But what about your last 20 years, your last 10 years? Yeah, like you shouldn't be dying. Yeah, you die. You shouldn't be dying for 20 years. Yeah, like some people are dying for 30 years. We've been dying for 30, 40 years. Yeah, right. So I want to wrap this up because we do got some time, right? But I want to say thank you so much for this. I think it's been really, really great. It's been a long time coming. Yeah, no. Where can people reach out to you and connect with you? Where can people find you? Instagram. Yeah. It's pretty much my main source of social media. It's Dave_Luna_126. That's pretty much where I'm at. I do have LinkedIn and stuff like that, but Instagram's where I'm at, where most of my posts are. And, hopefully soon I'll be having some certified training stuff on there. And, we'll see. Just got to pass that test. It's a lot, man. Yeah, for sure. It's a lot of information, which is good. Well, I'm really proud of you. I'm really happy for you. I think that you've done an incredible job. Like, you continue to inspire me today. And I think, we are breaking generational curses, like some of the things that have happened, things happen, shit happens. Everyone's got a past and everyone's got, a tough time, but we don't have to let that past define us and what happened. We don't have to repeat some of the same mistakes. We can learn and we can grow. And I think that's what we're doing. I think we both look to each other. Yeah, it's crazy. And so definitely follow this guy for sure. Yeah. Follow him, reach out, any kind of advice, questions. Yeah, definitely fitness, go to him. And thank you guys all for tuning in. Thanks. Thank you guys for listening to the podcast. Please, please, please make sure that you guys share this with anyone that you think will find this interesting. And also make sure that you guys subscribe, because I can see a lot of you guys are listening, but you aren't subscribed.